Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Mirror of Intimacy webinar. I'm Dr. Alexandra Katehakis, and it's Monday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, and we're going to be talking about reciprocity. So a few things before we start. I want to remind you to type your questions into the Q&A box, and I'll answer them as we go along. And also to remind you to please leave us any kind of book reviews or notes that you want to at Amazon for Mirror of Intimacy. We love hearing from you. We love getting your little notes, whether it's one word or a sentence or two about why you love the book. And to also follow us on Instagram, which is at Alex Katehakis. I also want to request that if you're watching this on YouTube, to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. All you have to do is click on the subscribe button below. So today I want to start with the quote of the day as usual. And today our quote is from John Dryden, who was England's first poet laureate. And of course, we're talking about reciprocity today. That is our topic. And the first poet laureate was named in 1666, which seems like an unimaginable date. So consider that he was well known for creating certain poetic mechanisms, rhythms, ways of writing. So he was quite revolutionary. But it sounds sort of old when you read the quote, but he says, "How happy the lover, how easy his chain, how pleasing his pain, how sweet to discover he sighs not in vain." And I think that's appropriate for Valentine's Day today as we think about how happy we can be in love as love, especially when we're reciprocating love to those around us. And how sweet his chain, how sweet it is to be chained to another, not in a perverted or destructive or dysfunctional way, but when we think about, our heart is enchained, our heart belongs to someone else. There is a sweetness to that. Binding, if you will, and how pleasing his pain, that we are in pain if we lose our love. We want to be in love, and our heart breaks terribly when we fall out of love, which is an essential part of just being a human being. And then finally, his sighs are not in vain. When we sigh, there's someone there who recognizes the sigh, who's there with us in our, whatever it is, our pleasure, our exasperation, but that we are enchained and with another. So this notion of reciprocity, I think, is really important in the language of love, because reciprocity occurs when someone gives something to us, and we automatically feel like we want to give something back. So some of you may remember there was a time when veterans would stand outside of supermarkets and give these little poppies on a wire, and they would hand you the poppy. And if you took the poppy, the request was a donation, right, in a little bucket they had. And some people would get very off-put by that because they didn't want to have to give anything back, because the minute we receive something, we often feel like we have to give back. The Hare Krishnas used this same strategy, if you recall, when airports were open a lot, by walking up to you and handing you a flower, which is a beautiful gesture. But if you took the flower, you had to be open-hearted to this person. And the request there again was a donation. You're not required to give the donation, but inherent in our humanity is this need to give back if somebody gives to us. And again, people could get very angry and even hostile to the people that were handing out flowers because they were defended against having to give something back. And sometimes the giving back is just a smile, right? That's the reciprocal movement. So if you feel obligated to give back, see if you can be open-hearted about it and less defended, rigid, stingy, because you feel like something's being taken from you. In both of these cases, examples I was giving you, what was being requested was money. But if you are with a lover or a friend, maybe they're not asking for money from you. They're just asking for an open heart or an open hand. And life takes us or takes on meaning through these reciprocal interactions. If I give to you, you give to me. There is an unspoken exchange of energy that takes place in that kind of reciprocity. So if you have a neighbor who greets you by welcoming you to the neighborhood, they're making an invitation for you to return in kind. Not necessarily that you have to bake them a cake, but there's an invitation there to show up, to participate in community or relationship. And that give and take is part of what defines ourselves in the world. And the art of existence really, I think, is to receive, is to see and be seen. It's very, very easy to give, but it's more difficult to receive, to be vulnerable. And so think about reciprocity with your loved ones. How much do you give and how much do you give back? And also, how do you give? Because depending on who we are depends on the lens through which we look through life. So to a teacher, reciprocity is all about a lesson. I teach you something, you're getting a lesson, I get something back, I get a lesson back. To a psychotherapist, it's all about referring to family of origin issues. So what is the lens through which you see the world? And if you're only giving that, is that also what you get back? So pay attention to that also, because we do what we know. And so how we interact is what returns to us. And reciprocity symbolizes our inner and outer worlds coming together. And there is a matchup or a synchronized harmony that occurs with that can be quite beautiful. So how do your inner worlds and your outer worlds match up? And think about your love relationship. People often say, well, my partner's not that romantic. And so, but how romantic are you? Are you the one who's setting the romantic stage? Are you going the distance? Are you treating your partner with great love and kindness, and so that you can get love and kindness back? And if you don't, there isn't a reciprocal dance or synchrony taking place, then you might want to rearrange or reconfigure or have a conversation about that relationship, whether it's actually really in harmony with the ideal relationship you want, or if maybe this person really isn't the right person for you. But the first examination always is me. What am I bringing? How reciprocal am I? How am I showing up? What are the things that I am most privileging in this relationship that tie to the saying, what goes around comes around? If you think about that, one of the arts to our very existence is to give and receive, to see and be seen. We are really, really deeply wired for connection from the time we are conceived through our infancy into our adulthood. Human beings do not do well without connection. And when we isolate, we start to really struggle, as we all saw during the COVID lockdown periods. And as we emerge into the world again, yet again, and hopefully this time in a way that's more safe than previous times, we start to have this jarring experience of encountering strangers now. And pay attention to how guarded you might be because of the fear that was evoked by having to isolate ourselves and quarantine and all of that. See if you can start to have reciprocal exchanges with people in your day-to-day life. Those micro exchanges are essential for health and well-being. So the tiny conversations you have with, someone in the grocery store, or someone at a gas station, or someone in the drugstore, all of those things help to keep us feeling less isolated. And don't wait for someone else to make the first move or to say the first thing. See if you can risk putting yourself out there in a way that makes you feel like you are living more of your purpose of giving and receiving and giving service and giving support to people, because you don't know what their day or life is like. They might be incredibly isolated. They may have just lost their partner Maybe their partner passed away that they've been with forever and they're at sea, or they lost a job and they don't know who they are right now. And so a simple act of kindness of mentioning that you like their shirt or their dog is cute, or, oh, you bought that product also and it's really good. That little exchange will have somebody coming back towards you. And it's not doing it so that you're getting something from it. It's just the recognition that when I give, something comes back to me. There is a reciprocal circuit in nature that's really undeniable if you try it. So, what are the ways that you give in your current relationship that has you feeling loved, cared for, wanted, seen, heard? And what are the ways that you hold back? Where are the areas that you feel defended or scared or afraid to make yourself vulnerable or to be authentic with who you really are because you're so busy trying to be somebody else or trying to look good or trying to do it right or whatever message is in your head? How do you start to really change the way that you think and your mindset about being open-hearted and generous and reciprocal in the world? And that takes work. Just like you're trying to build a new habit, if you're trying to build a new habit around eating or exercising, or let's say you want to write and you're trying to build a new habit of writing every day, even if it's for 10 minutes, you're exercising a particular new muscle that maybe isn't, second nature for you. So what do you do to start to bring that forward, to make that happen? You exercise it every day, whether it's your body, your food choices, your writing, your painting. Likewise, it's important to exercise your thinking strategies every day. That's why I and many, many people talk about keeping a gratitude notebook every day. What are you grateful for? Maybe in your gratitude notebook this week, you write down all the ways that you made an overture towards someone else, an act of kindness, an act of caring, and all the ways that that was reciprocated to you just magically. And maybe it wasn't exactly by that person, maybe it was from another person, but it still came back to you because of the synchrony that happens in the universe. Our thoughts create, and we have to go into action. And we have these beautiful relationships with people that we love, that are close in, but also a beautiful relationship with the world we live in. Do you see the beauty around you? Do you reciprocate that beauty by cleaning things up when you see a mess, or doing something in the public space that makes it a little bit more orderly and kind? Whether it's putting away your shopping cart after you've unloaded your car, even though you don't want to walk those extra several feet, you do it anyway, because there's somebody coming up after you that's got to put all those things away. Or there's another car that can't park because there's a shopping cart that's just left there, arbitrarily. These are the ways that our external environment impacts us and other people. Picking up a piece of trash that shouldn't be where it is doesn't really hurt you, and nobody sees you doing that. There's no applause, or you don't get a gold star for doing things that no one else sees, but you know that you've done it. You know that you are taking care of yourself, you're taking care of the environment, you're taking care of the people behind you that are coming behind you, whether it's a worker or another consumer coming to that store. So see if you can think about these ways of being in alignment and the give and take that goes with reciprocity. And think of the quality of love as an echo or a mirror, and that assures us that we have genuine presence, that we're doing the right things in the world. And you'll see those echoes coming back to you time and time again. So make the experiment. Don't be stingy. See if you can put yourself out there and see how reciprocity works for you. And this is not about boundary violations at all. If something has you out of your integrity, or you're bending over backwards for someone, that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about ways that don't take you out of your integrity, that don't have you violating your boundaries, that don't have people walking all over you. These are small acts of kindness and caring that actually don't cost you anything. They might be inconvenient, let's say. All right, so we do have some questions or statements here. Someone says that they were in a 25-year marriage and they felt like they gave a lot the first 20 years. And as their partner got more into his addiction, he became more isolated and disconnected from me. So I stopped trying, which makes sense. He's now in recovery for 6 months, and we had our disclosure 3 months ago. He's currently living outside the house. We're in a therapeutic situation. I'm a giving person, but I'm afraid to be that way with him again. I have compassion for him, but I can't find an ounce of energy to do anything for him after finding out he'd been betraying me for my entire marriage. How do I stay tuned to my true nature without being hurt by him again? Well, I would say that you are being true to your nature right now. If you can't find an ounce of desire or energy to do anything for him, you have got to honor that. You must honor that. And then you have to look at the ways that maybe you were over giving to him. And I'm not saying you were, but everything's up for investigation in these situations. Like, who was I? And why was I doing so much? And was I really getting anything back? And was that my way for filling up my loneliness or filling up what I wasn't getting or needing? I know that I do that. I will, go the distance to do things. For example, I love to cook, and cooking is a lot of work. And it's really an act of love and caring. And I'll do that when I feel like I don't have anything else to do, as opposed to thinking, maybe I'm lonely. Maybe I want more time with my partner or friends, or I need to reach out. But instead, I'm giving, giving, giving. And then I'm exhausted at the end of the day because it's a lot of work. And so that's an example of where we have to check ourselves all the time. So if you don't have energy to give to him right now, look, it's only been 6 months. That's not a long time. You really want to watch and see how he comes towards you. What actions is he taking to make these repairs? Because amends are not apologies. They are living, breathing actions every single day, forever, in many of the ways that I'm talking about, these reciprocal actions. So is he making amends? Is he coming towards you because you don't want to be chasing? But you also will get to a point where you start to notice that if things go well, he is coming towards you. He is making changes. He does want to connect to you. And that's when you have to move out of the repair stage and start to move into the relationship stage. And it's very challenging, but you've got to pay attention to what he does, not what he says. And when he starts to do things, you want to start to meet him to see if it continues in the way that it should be continuing, where there is a give and take and it's not just one-sided. So thank you for that question. Someone writes, I find that giving unconditionally in some relationships can be exhausting over time and can build resentment. How do we find balanced harmony when reciprocity doesn't work? Well, I think you might be conflating two things, because giving unconditionally is not what I'm talking about. The only people we give unconditionally to are children, babies and children. But that's pretty much it. And even to animals, other creatures or beings that are helpless, that can't necessarily consent, that need our help. But marriages and love relationships are highly conditional, if you ask me. It's not okay for me if somebody is cheating or lying or stealing. I have conditions, I have standards by which I live, and I'm not going to collapse those conditions or standards to accommodate anybody. So I'm not talking about unconditional giving or codependent giving. I'm talking about small acts of kindness, ways in which we give and people feel compelled to receive because we've done something nice. Or when people give to us, we feel compelled to give back because we want to keep that relationship or that friendship going. It's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. There is a give and take. And someone writes, my family of origin expected or demanded an immediate response to all verbal messages from my parents to me. And so I found myself expecting my partner to act the same way quickly. Well, that is a misappropriation for sure. And at first look, at first I took it as her not caring or respecting me. It's taken a long time for me to realize her family of origin had different rules. Still knowing this, I have an ongoing difficult to not see her latency in responding to me was not disrespect. And she sometimes says sometimes she thinks, and thinking takes time. That's right. So her rhythms may not be what your rhythms are. She might be more deliberate in her thinking. Your parents and your family's need for an immediate response might have all been their anxiety management, because you had to do it now and you had to get it done now. And there's no place to think about, what do I really want? Or can I actually do that? Also, our brain rhythms are slower. Some people are unbelievably quick thinkers and quick verbally. Some people are much slower thinkers or slower verbally. Sometimes the slower people are more accurate than the quick people. The quick people might get it done faster, but not as accurately. So these are places where we really have to be elastic internally. And that, I think, is a really key aspect of relationships, and watching our judgments, watching how when we don't get it the way we want it, it's very easy to judge our partners or to take it personally and make it about ourselves. In this case, saying, well, she doesn't respect me, or she's not listening to me, or why isn't she answering faster? As opposed to asking myself, why am I so anxious? It hasn't taken her a week to get back to me. It might take her till the end of the day. And if it doesn't take till the end of the day, then the two of you need to negotiate a time frame that's okay for both of you. So it's not okay just to wait for a week to an answer of, do you want to have dinner together tonight or not? The person who's slower thinker needs to say, let me get back to you, or I'll get back to you in this time frame. And as a couple, you need to negotiate what those agreements are, because a reminder to you that secure attachment in a relationship means that we make agreements and we stick to those agreements. So if I'm a quick thinker and you're a slow thinker, then we have an agreement that by the end of the workday, by 5 o'clock, if I ask you a question at 9 a.m., by 5 p.m., you'll get back to me. And you are in agreement that that's what we're going to do, because that closes the gulf or the chasm between the two of us, where I have to be patient and wait, and the other person has to speed it up a little bit and get me an answer. And that is an agreement that we keep and we hold hard and fast to, because it's important to us. It's important to our relationship. I just wanted to add that I think the trap couples get into is that we start to judge our partner as being slow or not caring, or they're ridiculous, or why don't they answer? And we have all these judgments that we ladle upon the other person, instead of really asking ourselves the difficult questions of, why do I need that answer so quickly? And what's up with me that I can't hold and wait? That I can't tolerate the waiting process? What kind of anxiety do I have? What standard am I holding that person to that really has nothing to do with them and everything to do with the family I grew up in? So Michael asks or says, I recently had to draw back my giving, my nature, because I noticed I was over giving. That's beautiful. There is something called over giving. She made statements about not coming over unless I would cook. After pulling back and putting the focus on myself, I noticed her change and making the effort to see me and even cook. It works. And that's really great, because if you are moving towards me, and you want to get closer, and I keep moving back, and before I know it, I'm up against a wall. I can't move towards you if I'm up against a wall. If you're always giving, 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 If you start to move back a little bit, that gives me some space to come towards you and to say, hey, you know what, Michael, you're always cooking. Why don't I cook? Why don't you come over this weekend? I'll cook. And then there is a give and take, and you have to tolerate receiving, because receiving is a much more vulnerable position than giving, because we're not in control and we don't know what's coming at us. And so it's a very great practice, the practice of receiving and just saying thank you and feeling what it feels like to be taken care of, as opposed to being the one who caretakes, because caretakers get exhausted and then they can have a resentment. Look at all I do. I do everything for this family. I cook, I clean, I pick everybody up, I do everything everybody wants to do, and I'm just worn out and nobody cares about me. And it's like, well, stop being a victim and stop doing all of that. If you stop doing all of that, guess what? People start doing what they need to do for themselves. It's a great lesson, Michael. Thank you. And let's see, I've identified myself as a love addict and keep finding myself in non-reciprocal intimate dynamics. Do you have any guidance for finding reciprocal relationships? Does it start with finding reciprocity external to love? Well, I think you want to look at what's happening, that you're not paying attention to the cues, that you are giving, or you're choosing people that don't give back to you in the way you need to give back, be given back to. So maybe you need to make an exhaustive list of what your needs are. What are your needs? What are your standards? What is important to you? And then when you date, does that person show up in that way? Or are you making excuses for why they don't? Because that's what love addicts tend to do. They tend to live in fantasy. They don't pay attention to the signs and symbols in front of them. And then they go off with the person anyway, because they're just so desperate to be in love. And you have to be willing to say no a lot when you're a love addict until yes shows up. But when yes shows up, you'll know it's the right person. So what are your needs? What is your love language? What are the things that are important to you? And then make sure you're choosing wisely and don't move the relationship along too quickly. How do we thread the needle of reciprocity given attachment differences? If one partner's need is for closeness, but their partners need distance, is it simply that the two need to be aware that the gift the other seeks is different from their own? Well, I would say yes, not knowing a lot about that. I think this matter of making agreements and keeping them is of paramount importance. So if you have a partner or you are avoidant, and the other partner is more preoccupied, let's say, with the relationship, there's a gap there, just like someone who wants an answer quickly and someone who thinks slower and answers more slowly. So where are the gaps in our relationship? How are we different? There are a couple books with different titles. One is called Why You Married the Wrong Person, and the other is called You Married the Wrong Person. And the truth is, everybody thinks they married the wrong person, because ultimately we're all so different. We're all so peculiar. We're all so high maintenance. That there is no right. It's just about our differences. And can we meet these these differences with kindness? So if your partner is avoidant and they need more space, there's a conversation there about, what kind of space do you need? What are you doing when you have space? Maybe that person likes to listen to music, or they like to, watch certain video games, while someone else likes to read in their space, or they like to write poetry when they have space. Everybody needs their space and they're doing something in it. So get curious about what's happening in that space. And then the person who needs more contact, who needs more affection or checking in, or how you doing, or what are you doing in there, in your space, to talk about why you need that space. You need that connection, rather, and why you need that connection more often than not. And maybe it's coming out of an insecurity because you don't really believe the person loves you or wants to be with you. That becomes a therapy issue. That is your, quote, neediness. And we're all needy, and it's fine to say that, but it's about then saying to your partner, look, when you've got your door closed and I hear you playing music and I know you're writing, can I come in? Can I knock on the door at hour intervals just to poke my head in and make eye contact with you and say hello, or I love you, or how's it going in here? Just some way of making contact is what really you're asking. And see if you can make agreements about that, because these really are gifts that we bring each other. We each have strengths and weaknesses. And so I would encourage you to see those as additive to the relationship, and how do you work together as an intimate team. Melissa just posted Alan de Bottom's book, Why You Will Marry the Wrong Person. And he was just on the Life Examined podcast on Saturdays on NPR this past Saturday. And he's just a beautiful philosopher, and his work and his writing is well worth reading. So that's an example of what I was talking about. He really dives into the differences unabashedly. And he's taken the shame out of our feelings of sadness and being alone, and not feeling so ashamed of that, because we all feel them. We just don't talk about them. And when some of us also, this is appropriate for what we're talking about, grew up with caregivers that were insensitive or neglectful or abusive, then we may feel more than this normal desire for reciprocity. We might need a lot more caring and a lot more giving and receiving, and we have to learn how to temper that. And we don't want to get compulsive about either one of those things, though, about giving too much or not receiving, or being like over giving, what some of the people are talking about. When I talk about reciprocity, I'm talking about a very simple little thing that we can do in our day, every day, with all of those around us. And if someone in your life doesn't reciprocate, it's usually because you want to look at if your need for validation is right-sized. If it was denied in childhood, does that mean you are involuntarily recreating this deep need for validation? And that can feel overwhelming to someone else. And we can't be all things to our partners. We have to have other people around us to help validate us. And we also have to be able to validate ourselves to a certain extent also. So you make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people that are loving and respectful. And they could say to you, this feels like too much for me sometimes. I love you, and I get that you need this constant attention, but I'm going to need you to find other ways of asking me for it, or other people to get it from too. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, but nobody wants to be smothered. And you also might be careful about how much of that is your emotional unavailability too, because sometimes when we're super needy and looking for validation all the time, that doesn't mean that we're available, because it's all about us and what we want and what we need. And it's all me, me, me. And it's very difficult to get close to that, because when are you actually seeing your partner? When are you actually giving to your partner? When are you reciprocating the small actions they are making? It's just that you're so busy being needy, you can't see these small actions and say thank you. So make sure that you are showing yourself love, that that you're giving to yourself, that giving to yourself is reverberating out into the world, so that there is a give and take here. So let's see, Dawn writes, I've learned so much in counseling over the past 4 years and have been practicing compassion with myself. Yay, Dawn. That's important, especially on a day like today, where self-love is the most important Valentine that you will get. I have noticed that I'm loving my new reciprocity, but that I'm still seeing old patterns that show up in my fears of sharing my wants and needs with my next partner. Well, here's the good news and the bad news. Those old patterns never go away. The beauty of therapy or recovery is that we start to notice them. We start to see, oh, there's that thing I do. It's not as gross as it once was, because it was gross, meaning large, and we couldn't see it and we were banging our head against it. It's smaller now, and we see it. So if you can treat those patterns with compassion also and say, oh, look, there's that thing. And like you said, I took the time to evaluate and ask myself, what do I want? What do I need? What are my values? And then sharing that with him. So that's beautiful to be able to be vulnerable like that. And in that vulnerability, you're now an authentic person. You're not trying to look good or smooth or super sexy or cool. You're just being yourself right now. And that is an aphrodisiac, by the way. There's nothing more powerful or beautiful than someone who is authentic in their vulnerability. Um, and then you say, what are the things that I should be looking for or aware of as I continue in this relationship? Well, on the matter of reciprocity, you should be noticing whether he returns that vulnerability in kind. Does he also unzip? Does he make his needs known? Is he willing to look uncool or not suave? And open his heart to you, and can you receive that in a way that's gentle and caring and kind, so that it makes it safe for him too. So this level of communication is crucial for safety in a relationship. And when you have safety, you start to build trust. And when you build trust, then you have the portal to the erotic, to beautiful sexuality, for conversations about what we do and don't like sexually, what we're afraid of sexually, what we want. And those conversations can also be very erotic, even though you're not maybe doing anything sexually different than you were before. It's just that active vulnerability that is so crucial, to opening these windows to the soul, to our hearts feeling like they're being held in a way that feels safe and that we're seen and known deeply. So I would say you're really on an excellent track here, and to just keep doing what you're doing and trust your intuition. And if something doesn't feel right, then you stop and you say to yourself, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel okay. I need to talk to him about it. And if he can meet you, and hear you, then you've got a green light. If he gets defensive or gaslights you or says it isn't true or shuts down, then you have to pay attention to that, because only it's easy, to say, oh, well, he hurt me, as opposed to I hurt myself. I saw that coming. I tried, I asked him, and he wouldn't really budge on it. And I kept trying anyway. So the overgiving that some people were talking about. So just modulate yourself. And one of the ways to do this is to really slow down, to slow the dating process down, to slow the moving in process down, to really get to know yourself in relation to this person, because we each bring out different things in each other. And you want to make sure this person is bringing out the best in you, not the worst in you or the defensiveness in you, that you feel compelled to move forward. All right. Thank you, Dawn, for that. So when I think about going forward today on this heartfelt day, can you reciprocate your beloved's love on as many levels as you can today, in actions, words, gestures, body language, spirituality, blessings? Be extra kind today as a symbol of participating in this collective idea of love. And this is a really challenging holiday. You can have a love-hate relationship with Valentine's Day, because there is something about it that can be very sort of feels superficial or contrived. Like you have to buy something, you've got to buy flowers, chocolate, wine, something like that, in order to show your love and appreciation. And you can feel very, very left out if you're single also. You can feel like, you're not getting it right, or you're a loser. And that's just a victim story. So do not do that to yourself today. I recommend that if you're single, go buy yourself some flowers, even though they're double the price today than they will be tomorrow. You can wait till tomorrow if you want to buy roses. Buy yourself some little box of chocolates or some sweet thing you've been wanting, to make yourself feel loved and good enough. Don't wait for that external validation or reflection, because when you love yourself, when you fill yourself with love, when you reciprocate what's in your heart and soul back to yourself, then love starts to come to you in all sorts of ways that will surprise you. And think about what you attract in your life. What within you might be reciprocating? Often we work on our issues and we surrender selfishness, but when we don't reciprocate our truer selves, then we aren't going to get that reciprocity back. So look inside to what you're emanating to the world. Are you shining your light to the world today? Are you meeting people with eye contact, with open-heartedness and saying hello? And so be an echo of this Valentine's Day today. Echo Valentine's back to all those that you meet. And this will allow you to focus your reciprocity, not just today, but again, it's a habit that you form. And while you do this, you start to live in your own loving. And that is a message that I really, really want you to hear, that it's important to live in your own loving, because yours is a love that cannot be taken from you. It's not contingent upon anything else. It's not conditional because it's just me, myself, and I. So what one small thing can you do for yourself today that telegraphs your love to yourself? Whether it's you decide that you're going to go work out because you've been lazy about that, or you're going to eat well today and not eat something junky or sugary that makes you feel bad. Or you are going to do something for your space, the space that you live in. Maybe you're going to clean it up today. But something as if you had a date coming over, if you're single, especially, if you had your perfect date coming over, what would you do to your environment to welcome them? And then can you welcome your own internal lover to be your own beloved into that space tonight as you have dinner, maybe with candlelight, maybe with a single flower, to remind yourself of the truth of who you are. So happy Valentine's Day today to all of you on this February 14th, 2022. I hope that you practice reciprocity today in all areas of your life and start to notice when it comes back to you tenfold. Okay, I look forward to seeing you next month. And for now, keep loving all that come in your way. Love yourself. And keep in mind also that this is Black History Month. And while we shouldn't just be loving Black History Month on one day or 1 month, make sure that you extend your love to people of color, especially if you're white. Make an extra effort to extend that love, which you should be doing on a daily basis anyway. But keep in mind that not everyone has it as easy as those of us that walk in white skin. So thank you all. You're a blessing, and I wish you well, and I look forward to seeing you in March.